YouTube. If this is your first time, then welcome, and if not, then welcome back. For you new homicidal honeys, my name is Ranee B, and this is Homicidal Tea, where we spill the true crime tea and talk about things that you can't really go into detail with most people without sounding a little crazy. Today's case is covering the solved homicide case of Tristan Jensen. Kids. Oh my God, kids, man. I hate it when the cases involve kids. But before we get into it, I want to remind you to click that like button and smash that subscribe button like you would a chipmunk. Yeah, more on that later. Let's just get into the case of Tristan Jensen. Tristan Jensen had a difficult childhood. His mother died of cancer and his father was incarcerated. Next door to him, though, lived his Aunt Shelley and two cousins, Matthew and Brandon. He moved into his aunt's house when he was 13 years old. Tristan was reportedly a pretty popular kid at school, and as he grew up and social status became more important, he definitely fit into what you'd classify as the popular group of kids. On September 28, 1998, workers discovered human remains in a sewage line in Redlands, California. Now, many of these workers and police investigators actually mistook it for a joke and thought maybe it was a mannequin or a prank, but it turned out to be anything but funny. The bones were identified as human, and they were of a person between 13 and 17 years old. A jawbone was also discovered on the sewer ledge with several teeth still intact. Missing Persons was contacted and they poured over missing persons report and things like that. And they found a missing persons flyer that was discovered on a door of a local shop. Tristan Jensen, a 14-year-old kid, was the subject of this report, and his family had reported him missing about 7 weeks prior. Tristan's aunt and grandma were questioned by the police, but Tristan's aunt stated that she had a gut feeling it was Tristan after hearing about it, the discovery of the remains on the radio. After leaving the house to go skateboarding, Tristan vanished. He left the house after a brief argument with his grandmother about doing chores, normal teen angst. But every time this happened, every time, he always returned home. He still miffed, but usually he's a teenager, come on. Well, the next day his family called the police, and Tristan's family was asked whether they had anything that they could be used to positively identify the remains. Police asked his aunt, his grandmother, if they had anything that had maybe any kind of DNA on it, and his grandmother actually did have one of his baby teeth, and they took it for, extruding the DNA from the pulp of the tooth to identify it with the remains. Tristan's remains were positively identified. His entire family and a ton of kids from school were just devastated. Tristan's body was taken to the coroner for additional examination, but unfortunately, due to decomposition, the cause of death was ruled as unknown. The bones actually had skeletonized fairly quickly, the authorities felt, and possibly because of the sewer fumes. It just ate the organic material away. They could also assume from the remains that Tristan was of a below average size and stature for his age, and they deduced that he just would not have ventured into that sewer on his own. So he most likely was placed there by somebody, and that somebody would be the person who killed him. While police were canvassing the area, a 15-year-old boy named J.P. Remsen reported that he had spotted a dark-colored van in the vicinity. Some people whom he identified as Hispanic were seen putting something into the manhole. The neighbors were questioned by the police about the van, but no one else had seen anything. But they were familiar with J.P., and they knew that he was a troubled adolescent. J.P., according to his neighbors, would frequently play in the manhole and light off fireworks. J.P.'s backyard was just across from where the manhole was, and also across from where Tristan's jawbone was discovered. The cops went back to J.P.'s house to speak with him, but they noticed a box of knives that were sitting on the entryway as they arrived. J.P.'s father answered the door and informed the police that J.P. would be arriving home from school shortly. The box of knives that were there before, poof, vanished. J.P. was only 15 at the time, and yet he stood at roughly 6 feet tall and weighed 270 pounds. When the cops inquired about Tristan, J.P. stated that he'd never even heard of him. The cops didn't have many questions for J.P., but they did have questions for the Remsen family's neighbors. They discovered that Mr. Remsen was making pyrotechnics in his garage, despite the fact that doing so was banned in Redlands, California. Cops also called the local high school, where they learned that J.P. actually knew Tristan. Just a few weeks before Tristan was killed, they actually had a fight at school. The cops acquired a search warrant for the Remsen residence. J.P. was quickly becoming their main source of information and quickly becoming numero uno suspecto. When cops entered the house, they discovered blood stains immediately. However, their investigation was cut short when explosive devices were discovered in the Remsen garage and kitchen. What? They later claimed to have discovered roughly 1,000 pounds of explosive devices. A bomb squad had to be dispatched, and they actually had to be called in twice, and they had to dig this monstrous hole. They detonated the explosives in there. Could you imagine hearing that in your neighborhood? Could you imagine somebody building pyrotechnics in your neighborhood? No, anyway. Okay, I digress. John and Susan, JP's parents, were arrested. They were accused of possessing explosives, endangering children, and using automatic firearms. The police were eventually able to conduct a thorough search once all the explosives were properly removed from the premises. Now, this is where the cops had discovered that trail of blood. Now, it extended from the stairwell to the garage inside the Remsen residence. How do you not notice that? The police didn't even need to use luminol or any other chemicals to brighten the blood stains in the garage. You could see them with clear, no aids needed. The evidence suggested that someone had been brutally beaten or stabbed and that no one had even attempted to clean it up. J.P. Remsen was taken out of school and brought to the precinct for an interview with detectives. Now, the cops inquired if J.P. had ever invited Tristan to his home. He said, "No, never. I don't know the guy." Story change. JP eventually admitted to the cops that he disliked Tristan but would never want him dead. Then again, story change. JP finally confirmed that Tristan had been at the house and there had been an accident after they had an argument over knives. It's never a good thing to argue over. Tristan intended to buy a knife from JP, who was supposedly known as a knife collector. How edgy. JP had said that they had gotten into a fight and Tristan had slid down the stairs with a knife in his hand and landed on the knife. The cops didn't buy that story. But then again, there's also another story change. JP then confessed to Tristan's murder. He claimed that he stabbed Tristan in the chest twice and dragged him into the garage. After that, he pulled the body outside over the wall and into the bushes. And then he stuffed Tristan's body into the manhole about an hour after the murder. All of this happened in broad daylight over a course of a few hours. What are people doing? They're just not looking outside, apparently. JP agreed to return to the crime scene and do a reenactment for police officers, but JP's reenactment was really creepy. He displayed zero emotion, dead inside, nothing. JP's father agreed to a polygraph test, but his mother refused. There was no indication that they assisted JP or were even aware of Tristan's death. JP actually had used a story to tell his mother and explain away the blood because he was too lazy to clean up, but whatever. After he'd killed Tristan, he made up a story and called his mom and said that the dogs had gotten into a fight and one of them had bled. Great story, pal. JP's story was missing one detail, though, according to the cops. He was also suspected of trying to dismember Tristan. They had found his shoes and charred clothing near the house. What? So he took his nude body? How do people not... I'm telling you, I do anything in my neighborhood and everybody sees. Everybody, I mean, literally, everybody's poking out their window. Little Gladys Kravitz. I don't know if y'all remember, old enough to remember that, but this guy drug a dead nude body out to a sewer and nobody saw a thing. It's a good show if you haven't seen it on, what channel is that on? I think it's on Sundance. No one saw a thing? Oh my God, it's so good. Anyway, I digress again. But they also discovered a hacksaw in the garage, but tests revealed that the blood on it came from an animal, so there's no telling what he was doing with that hacksaw. From what I found researching, though, they never determined anything further regarding this. JP was charged with first-degree murder, and he was tried as an adult in a bench trial. As far as the motive, get this. Tristan had reported that JP had brought alcohol to school. Remember, I mean, like in high school, I know a lot of us, not me, brought alcohol to school, but I mean, he was 13, 14. I mean, come on. You still got tattletale in you at that age, so I can't be too mad at the kid for reporting it. JP was reprimanded by school officials as a result of it, but in addition to this, Tristan is also said to have been dating, so serious at, preteen age. Tristan was also said to have been dating a female who JP had a crush on, and JP was extremely jealous of Tristan. JP was found guilty of second-degree murder, which I don't really understand because the way everything looks, it looks like it was premeditated, but whatever. On April 26, 2000, he was given a sentence of 15 years to life in jail. And JP's parents had also previously pled guilty to the firearms offenses. Susan was given 3 years probation, while John was sentenced to 2 years in prison. JP has been denied parole, and while in prison has gotten himself into some more trouble. He and another inmate had violently assaulted another inmate in 2006, and it was bad. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison after pleading guilty to attempted murder. Not one to learn lessons. Authorities also found 2 syringes in what is called legal mail that they're not supposed to open, but I think it's pretty easy to feel an envelope and feel needles. Weird. He pleaded guilty to possession of controlled narcotic in 2015, and they gave him a 4-year sentence. Keep on racking up those years. Now, it's easy to conclude that JP didn't have a happy childhood, but that's no excuse for murdering a 14-year-old. I mean, taking Tristan's life just because a bully in the neighborhood was envious of him? I mean, he has an entire life ahead of him before he's brutally murdered over some stupid small argument. JP, I think, deserves, well, you know what I think. I don't care how old he is. Give him the needles! But, I guess for y'all, I'll do life in prison, I guess. He deserves to spend as much time as possible in prison. Needles. Many individuals, including Tristan's family, worry that if he's released, he will actually harm someone else. Holy cow. I mean, that's the case of Tristan Jensen. I mean, that's insane to me when I hear about kids killing kids. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Have you guys ever heard of this one? This one's another one that tucked itself neatly in the back of my mind somewhere until something I thought or looked at prodded it out of hiding. It makes me sad. It makes my soul hurt when I hear about these kind of kids that get wrapped up into this. I'm an adult child that came from a dramatic home life, lots of arguing and other crap, but it definitely makes marks on you that don't wash off. But it also doesn't necessarily precipitate becoming a violent maniac later in life. But there has to be more to it than that. I mean, I take bugs out when I find them inside the house, and I have to force myself to keep it together, not dissolve into a mess of tears whenever I'm on my way to work and I hit a chipmunk. True story. Bums me out just thinking about it. I go a different way home from work now. Not kidding. But yeah, I don't know what causes people to snap like that, really. I mean, especially people this young. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you like the new lighting and acoustics. I hope it sounds good because I got to move to a new location. So it should be another plus on quality. Oh, that means you got to give it a like. Well, you ain't got to do anything, but it would be cool if you did. Yeah.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
I'll see you guys in the next episode, and you stay alive, you homicidal cuties. Bye.